We are ready. Hello, everybody.
Guys,
Greetings. Are we ready to go now?
sure, we're ready.
Success?
Yeah, our time's a bit truncated, which is technical difficulties, but hey, at least we're here again this week. And from what I understand from Corey is that you guys have questions for me today, but I was going to maybe just talk about the next couple of visits together as well. And maybe you've done that already, Corey, I don't know, but so next.
I told them a little bit, but you can update as well.
Yeah, just so you know, next time, and so for your planning and prep, we talked about the drone bill last time. It was one of the bills on your guys' list, both the overall drone bill that sort of criminalizes trespass of a drone over private property, and then the Orca drone bill. Those bills didn't make it out of committee for reasons we can talk about, interesting things. But the person who represents Amazon and I were going to come on March 22nd and have you kind of act as a committee. I'll take the proponent side of the bill, which is to regulate drones. Her name is Kim, will come and do a presentation on what's the cool things that are happening with drones and why they shouldn't be regulated. Okay, so that's next time. So you'll essentially be like a committee, a legislative committee. And then the following time, which is the 5th, we'll take a bill of your choice, and I think it sounds like it's going to be the nuclear energy bill, making that defining that as an alternate energy, qualified alternative energy source. And we'll have a debate. I'll preside over debate. Maybe you split up however you like to, pros and cons on that one, and we'll have a parliamentary sort of debate on the bill and maybe a vote at the end of it as well. Does that sound like a good pathway for the next couple of visits?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Did you guys forget how to talk?
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. Okay, fantastic.
So I can tell you, I'll give you a little background, and then I know you have some questions today. So a lot has happened since we last met, including a whole slug of bills that died in the House committee, including drone bills and other bills. And it's one of the sort of strange things about, in fact, I was just talking about the producer, Brett, about this. This is a very human environment here, where attitudes and personalities sort of get in the way. And what happened in the Technology and Energy Committee in the House is that the House is, I think we talked about last time, is 50 Democrats, 48 Republicans. So it's very evenly split. That means the committees are usually a 1-vote margin to the majority party. So one of the members of the majority caucus in the committee, Technology and Energy, got into sort of a personal issue with the chair, and he said, "I'm not voting for any of the bills out of this committee." This is in the last week before bills were slated to come out of committee, and the Republicans didn't give any votes over. So in other words, there was just no way to get bills out of his committee. He didn't have a majority to do it, so he just had to shut things down. A lot of things died, including the drone bills. So that's how this process works. Sometimes it's not for the purists anyway. So with that, I know you guys have questions today, and I don't know, Corey, how you wanted to do it. Just who's I'll let you run it on your end, and I'll try and answer everything I'm able.
Okay. Well, what I had them do is research some of the pros and the cons and listen to some of the committee hearings that have been going on the nuclear bill.
Right. Okay.
And so they have some questions based on, there's some financial questions, there's some based on the pros and cons and what might happen if this bill does get passed or doesn't get passed, and so forth and so on. And so they have, I've given them an order. They know what they're doing.
Okay, great.
So
here's a caveat.
and just say who you are.
Not an expert on nuclear energy, but anyway, with that, go ahead, fire away, guys.
Okay, I'm Stella, and my question is, while nuclear energy is relatively clean and low polluting, the treatment of radioactive waste produced by it results in high pollution. Have the legislators considered this, and if so, how and why did this affect the opinion of them?
Yeah, okay. So has the legislature considered, or have legislators considered, the negative side of nuclear energy, as you say, the radioactive waste? And I think you really hit on in your question, you came up with the pro and the con for the bill. which it is, you know, nuclear is arguably a relatively sort of clean energy in you know, as it's processed, but then you have the spent fuel, which is you know, a really bad thing. And that's pretty much how, as I gathered, I wasn't at the hearing, but how the proponents and opponents of the bill, you know, sort of, you know, express their interests in this as well. Now, I think we may have talked briefly last time. I think there's one nuclear sort of, you know, processor in Washington, down in the southeast corner of the state in the Tri-Cities. And so those folks are very, not surprisingly, would argue this is a great energy source and it should be included. Others, maybe from, you know, Western Washington, would say we don't want the waste product from this fuel, and so don't encourage this by making it a designated alternate energy source. Let me just tell you that the bill did get out of committee. It got out of the Energy Committee, and where it is right now, it's stuck in what they call Rules Committee. So in the Senate and the House, when a bill goes in initial committee, like you're going to be, next time we talk, you'll be the committee that has jurisdiction over the drone bill. As a committee, you act as an agent essentially for the whole body. So the bill came out of committee and it went to a next step in the process, which is called the Rules Committee. Different states, and I sort of oversee Verizon Government Affairs for several states, and different states have different processes, but in this state, in Washington, you have kind of a filter before a bill goes to in this case, the Senate floor, which is the Rules Committee. Now, as of today, the energy bill, the nuclear energy bill, is still essentially stuck in rules. It doesn't look to me like it's going to get moved to the floor. It's probably going to die there as well. So I'd say it's 90% chance that bill's not going to make it as well. But anyway, to your question, it looks to me like both sides are considered. The bill moved out of committee, and that's probably as far as it's going to go, I think. Any other questions?
Nikhil?
So my name is Nikhil, and one of the arguments against Bill 5467 is about how nuclear energy is a solution without a problem.
Yeah.
What is the need to talk about nuclear energy being an alternative right now?
Or even as a larger question on that, why are there lots of bills that are solutions without problems? Why do these often go into committee?
No, and it's a really good question, because you get bills, you know, I mean, you get bills that are really from what do you want to say, from the heart, in terms of a solution that is real. And this bill probably is that to some degree, but it also wants to encourage the use of nuclear energy by the folks, you know, whose economy sort of depends upon it. And so that's down in the Tri-Cities. Are we stuck? Can you guys hear me? You guys are, is it, what's that? The frame, can you hear us? You're frozen there. Hello? I think we're in latent.
Still working, it's just, oh, you moved. A little bit.
How's that?
The audio's good. The audio is fine for me. It's just the video here. You guys are just in latency sort of mode. Is it the same on your end? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can now, but we couldn't before.
Okay. I was just saying, I mean, it's a good question. So really simply put, a couple of reasons to want to run bills. One is to try and solve a problem. The other is to take care of your hometown constituencies. And I think in this case, probably the genesis of this bill, legislators from Eastern Washington and the Tri-Cities want to promote nuclear energy because it's a part of the economy down there, both the energy and the cleanup. So does that make sense? Sometimes you get a really nice happy fusion of those two things, really good policy with a good hometown bill, and that's a really good thing, but you know, for legislators. Next question.
Teddy.
Yeah, I'm Teddy, and question is, would nuclear plants getting a tax reduction because they're a qualified alternative energy source hurt the current government funding in Washington in a significant way at all?
One more time. I didn't catch the very first part of your question, Hetty. Sorry about that. Well, can you run it by me one more time?
Because nuclear plants would get a tax reduction from being a qualified alternative energy source, would that hurt current government
Yeah, something's, the audio's cutting out a little bit, and I'm so sorry about that. I'm just,
Really, he's wanting to know about tax reductions and
Yeah.
how if you bring in another tax reduction, how that might affect Washington's overall economy.
oh, I see. Yeah. I mean, it's really good. That's a good question. Let me talk about it just broadly. You get tax reductions. I mean, ideally, the sweet spot on a tax reduction is you encourage a particular activity by reducing the tax on it. So you encourage that activity to grow. And then, the economics of it in a perfect world would say that you're going to generate enough economic growth that you'll make back and then some the tax cut. So I'm not sure specifically in this case, whether that calculation has been done, but that's the idea behind tax, incentives generally. Does that make sense?
And would this, if this was a bill that would make it out of the Rules Committee, it would end up in the Fiscal Committee?
No, this bill actually went. This bill went from committee to the Rules Committee. So, because this particular bill, it requires billing statements to denote the percentage of electricity a customer uses. There was nothing actually in this bill that I see anyway that creates a tax incentive one way or another. So it didn't. If it were a tax cut bill, it would have gone from the Energy Committee to the Ways and Means Committee in the Senate and then to Rules.
Okay. Vivi?
So I'm Vivi, and my question is.
Be sure to speak a little louder.
Okay. I'm Vivi, and my question is, how split are the parties on this bill, or is it kind of like all Republicans are on one side of this bill and all the Democrats are on the other? How does that impact discussions about the bill?
Yes, I mean, it's a good question. As I look at the sponsor list on this bill, it's almost all Republicans. There's one Democratic sponsor. His name is Steve Hobbs from Snohomish County, and he tends to be a middle of the road fellow. He's pro-business and he's kind of conservative, but this bill is primarily a rural Eastern Washington bill. And rural Eastern Washington is probably, other than, okay, if you take Spokane out of the equation, there's the 3rd district in Spokane, which is kind of North Spokane, is one of the most liberal districts in the state. If you take that out of the equation, I don't think there's a single Democratic legislator in Eastern Washington. So you've got a lineup here that is predominantly Republican. And I'll bet the reason this bill is just stuck in Rules is because we talked about the House, Democratic House. If this bill got out in the Senate floor, even assuming it passed, it would probably go over to the House and just die there. So maybe they're just saying, we have a lot of things to do. We have, to raise money for education. Let's not pull this bill and send it over to an almost certain death. But it's a really good question. And you have to look at every one of these bills. I mean, we have this 2-party system, right? You have two houses, the House and Senate, and you have 2 parties within them. So in some ways, if an objective person would say, wow, that's really dysfunctional, right? It's set up to kill bills, to talk them to death. And it's all true. It's really hard to get a bill passed here. But the good news on that is that you have this checks and balances. And one of them is just exactly what you mentioned, the 2-party system. How are we doing on time? I know I can spend a few more minutes if you guys can. We're sort of at our designated stop time, but because we had such a late start, I'm happy to take a couple more questions.
We could take it till 12, I think.
Okay, good.
If you
I'm
go
good
till 12.
until 12. I'm good until 12. Okay.
Okay, I'm going to have them have one more question that's still related to the nuclear bill, and then I have 2 questions that are related to the other bills as well, and
Okay.
hopefully we can maybe look at those.
Alrighty.
Yeah, although they're
So far, these are really great questions, so guys. I just want to tell you. Anyway, sorry, Corey, fire away.
that's fine, Griffin.
My name is Griffin, and my question is, if SB 5467 is passed, how would it affect the daily lives of people and their energy consumption?
Well, I mean, it looks to me like the bill would say that somebody can choose to have, assuming this bill passed, you could choose as a consumer to have at least some portion of your energy provided by the nuclear power plant. And that it would, so you could almost, be that consumer that adds your voice or whatever to being pro-nuclear energy by saying, I want part of my energy to come from that. And then the bill has to reflect, your bill has to reflect that that's the case. Now, if you don't want nuclear energy, you can say, I don't want that in terms of an alternative, energy source. So it looks like there's a real, tangible effect on this bill, assuming that it did pass, in terms of the energy consumers, what they would be able to they could have nuclear energy, provided electricity to them if they wanted it. So there's a real connection.
And where would this nuclear energy come from, though? I mean, does it state like coming from Hanford or from Idaho?
Yeah, I mean, there's one nuclear power plant in Washington, as far as I know, and I don't know that the bill has any. And I don't, it's a really good question. I'm not an expert enough in energy to know whether they can buy energy off the grid from a nuclear plant in other states. I'm going to assume that they can, but let me on that one see for next time if I can. It's a really good question if I can, because the other reason it's a good question is somebody could argue, hey, this isn't even going to impact the economy of Washington because we're going to be buying nuclear energy off the grid from some other state. So it's a good question. I don't know the answer. Let me try and get back to you on that one next week. Okay.
Right. And I think that's a good question for us to think about if we're going to debate this topic as well.
Right.
That it's an argument that could be made on.
Yeah, very good argument. Yep.
I think we'll move on to talking about kind of some of the other bills as well, because we did have a couple questions.
Sure.
In our last few minutes, and so whichever one you want. And I'm gonna put Sage right in front of you.
Okay. Hi, I'm Sage.
Yeah.
And my question is, what is the potential effect of the environmental bill to local farmers if passed?
This is the fossil fuel bill?
Yeah, the carbon emissions one.
Yeah. I'm just going to take a look at that bill to see whether there was any farming interests who testified. Hang on just a second, okay?
Okay.
While I'm looking at this, I'm going to turn the question back to you because I hadn't thought about how this might impact local farmers, but are you thinking of this in terms of what emissions, how they potentially pollute the air and therefore the soil? Is that the sort of the connection that you're making?
Yeah, I was just wondering because I know that farming, Eastern Washington, a big part of the economy, actually $17 billion in revenue comes from the farming industry. So I was.
I mean, it's a really cool question. Let me I know a little bit about carbon pollution in terms of a different, economy, if you will, and that's oyster growing, which is kind of farming in a way, right? And ocean acidification appears to be affecting the oyster, what they call oyster spawn, right? And we have some of the most pristine areas of oyster growing in the country right here in Washington, yet the oyster production has declined because there's a certain time when an oyster is developing where the water, the acidification of the water can affect it. So and it's a really kind of a fascinating scientific sort of study. I've never thought about it, carbon affecting the soil. I mean, so I don't know the answer. And as I look over the bill here, I'm not really seeing that folks have talked about that. I mean, they're talking about the effects on the humans, breathing this stuff in and stuff, but I'm just not seeing that. It's a cool question. I just don't know the answer, whether there's any, but I'll tell you that the bill here, a woman named Mary Dye is a legislator from the 9th District, which is Whitman County, right? And she, probably the predominant industry there is farming, okay? It also represents WSU. So the 9th District is south of Spokane, right? Breadbasket. She voted against the bill out of committee. And I would think that if she was concerned about the impacts on farmers, that she might have taken a different vote. Okay, so that's a little anecdote that tells me something about it, I guess. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
And then Lucy, you want to ask our final question? I think you should come on up. Don't worry about the notes.
Come on up, Lucy. Lucy, you were gone last time, right?
Yeah. How does because I'm doing the carbon bill, and
Yeah.
how would it become too strict? Because I was reading a bit about it, and one of the cons is it could become too strict. And how would it become too strict?
I get well. My take on that, how it would become too strict, is if we're all of a sudden penalizing, Washingtonians for constricting our economy in a way that others aren't. So I think maybe that's what is read into that question. So if we're reducing our carbon levels and having an impact on our economy, but British Columbia isn't doing so, I mean, that would put us at an economic disadvantage. That's I think what the folks would say about that being too strict. That's my take on it. What do you think, Lucy?
Well, maybe because it would have a specific rule, and you get in trouble if you didn't follow that.
Yeah. All right. Well, anyway, again, good questions the whole time. I appreciate you guys being so thoughtful and well prepared. And next time, like I say, I don't know how you sort of want to arrange it. If you want to have appoint a committee chair to direct questions, I'll be here, and we'll be set up for 2 people in the committee hearing, if that works, and we'll do a pro and con. You guys can ask questions, and then maybe take a vote whether you move the bill out of committee or not afterward. Is that cool?
Yeah, that sounds good. So if we have them prepare questions, and would you have kind of opening statements or anything, or
Yeah, we probably
you'll have
what happens in a committee hearing typically is you have a staff person that gives a read of the bill, essentially just gives a summation of the bill. I can do that real briefly, and then we'll go into the pro and the con, and I'll probably take the pro argument, which is pro regulation of the drones, right? And Kim, who works for Amazon, will talk about, I think, the con side. Don't regulate these things, and then we'll have questions, and then we'll try and pack all this into the half an hour, and you guys can decide whether you want to vote the bill out of committee then or not. You can.
Okay, and we'll focus on not only drones with orcas, but just regulating drones in general.
Yeah, the big bill, the big drone bill, which, hang on, I think it's 1049. Just a sec. That's 1049. So let's focus on that one, 1049.
All right.
Okay.
And we will. Thank you so much for your time today.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys. Great questions again. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care.
Have a good day.
You too.
Thanks.
Bye.